All right, welcome to the Explainer. So when you think about the 13 American colonies, you probably picture them as this one single thing, right? The starting point of the United States. But the reality? Well, it's a lot more complicated. They actually begin as three totally distinct and often clashing worlds. So let's just jump right in with a big question. When we talk about colonial America, are we really talking about one single experience for everyone? The short answer? Not even close.
Yeah, this wasn't just 13 cookie-cutter settlements. It was a whole collection of really different regions stretched all along the Atlantic coast. And believe me, where you happen to live pretty much determined everything about your life.
Okay, so let's start our journey way up north in the New England colonies. If you want to understand this place, you really just need to remember two things: God and cod. Seriously. It was a region built on deep religious faith and the cold, rich waters of the Atlantic Ocean.
The absolute key to understanding New England is its geography. I mean, the soil was rocky, the winters were incredibly harsh. You were not going to get rich trying to be a farmer here. It just wasn't possible. So that forced the colonists to look elsewhere to survive, let alone prosper.
So, since they couldn't pull their fortunes from the difficult soil, they pulled them from the sea instead. New Englanders became these master shipbuilders and expert fishermen, creating a really bustling maritime economy that was centered on port cities like Boston.
All right, moving south a bit, we get to the middle colonies. And this region developed a completely different personality. It earned a reputation for its diversity and, for the time, its tolerance. Here, the geography was pretty much the polar opposite of New England. We're talking fertile land, moderate weather. It was perfect. This turned the region into an agricultural engine. They called it the breadbasket of the colonies, and it produced huge amounts of wheat and grain.
But, it wasn't just about the farming. The middle colonies, especially Pennsylvania with its Quaker roots, actually offered religious freedom. This was a huge deal back then, and it attracted a ton of different immigrants from all over Europe, creating this incredible melting pot of cultures and ideas.
And now for our final stop. Let's head all the way down to the southern colonies. Here we find a society and an economy built on an entirely different and much, much darker foundation.
The long, hot summers down south were perfect for growing these incredibly profitable but very labor-intensive cash crops like tobacco and rice. This climate didn't just shape the economy, it created an entire social order.
You see, this whole economic model was built on the plantation system. And that system, in turn, was 100% dependent on the brutal institution of slavery. This created a rigid, hierarchical society dominated by a wealthy planter class, a structure that was completely unlike anything you'd find in New England or the middle colonies.
So we have three completely different worlds: the maritime north, the diverse and farm-focused middle, and the plantation south. But they weren't isolated from each other, so what was the thread that tied them all together?
The answer is they were all essential pieces of a vast, interlocking economic system, the triangular trade. This was a massive network that connected the economies of the Americas, Europe, and Africa.
So here's how this brutal cycle worked. You had European goods going to Africa, where they were traded for enslaved people. Those people were then forced across the horrific Middle Passage to the Americas to produce raw materials. And then those raw materials, sugar, tobacco, cotton, were shipped right back to Europe. It was this self-perpetuating and, for some, monstrously profitable system.
This all brings us to the very complex legacy of this period. I mean, how do we make sense of these three different worlds, all tied together by this one global system?
So let's boil it down. What are the key things to take away? First, colonial America wasn't one story, it was three. Second, geography was basically destiny. It shaped everything about each region's way of life. And third, all three of these worlds were ultimately connected by an economic engine fueled by the triangular trade and the horrors of slavery.
And that leaves us with a final thought to carry forward. These weren't just historical curiosities. These deep-rooted regional differences in economy, culture, and labor systems, they laid the groundwork for divisions that would echo for centuries. So the question really is, how much of that original blueprint can we still see in the United States today?